Hey, welcome to the Game Changer Performance Podcast. So excited that you're here with us. As always, I hope and pray that you would be inspired to leverage the influence God's given you to impact the world around you. That's what this podcast is all about. I know today's guest is going to inspire you and encourage you, hopefully even challenge you a little bit to lean in and really use what God's given you. He's an entrepreneur. He is a dancer. I might, ask him to give me a few tips on dance here. He is a man of faith. He's just got his hands in a little bit of everything. He's a podcaster, and I love how God is using his podcast. And so I want to welcome my man, Ben, to the podcast. Ben Chung, what's up, brother? How you doing?
What's up, Josh? Oh, man, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Praise God for technology. We could do this from different states, different cities. And yeah, man, I'm happy to be here, bro.
I mean, you talk about different states. I love, we met a couple years ago. I think it's already been a couple years in California, a gathering of just different leaders. I know, as we were talking even before the show, Dave Gibbons, I know a mentor of ours. I mean, somebody who just, like, the gold that he shares anytime I get to be around him. And, you talk about the role that he's even played in your life and helping you grow as a leader, communicator. So I love seeing what God is doing through your life from a distance. The first name or word that comes to my mind is the Jabberwockeez.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, bro, like thinking of that, I mentioned that to somebody. I mean, when you hear that, your mind instantly goes to watching that story unfold. Talk about that just for a second, and then I want to get to kind of the beginning story of just how you even got there. But what is that, 2005, 6 time frame?
I joined the crew. I joined Jabberwockeez in 2007, and then we're probably most folks know us from was when we won the TV show America's Best Dance Crew, and that was in 2008.
2008.
So 2008, and I was with them for almost about 8 years, and that was kind of it was my dance dream. You know what I mean? When the crew started in 2003, and I remember I was at the very first performance, and this is pre-TV. This is just like a showcase that they were doing out here in San Diego.
Okay.
And I just knew that was they were going to be game changers. Like, they were going to literally change the game of dance, and they did. Wow. And the first performance, I was like, I need to know who these guys are, and I got to figure out a way to like be in their midst. And God's kind of wired me in a type of way where when I really want something, I figure out a way to get it. That's
a gift, man. That's a gift.
Or at least figure out a way to be around it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I just like to be around the things that really inspire me. And, as a dancer, like that was it. I was like, man, that's the crew right there. Yep. And so when I joined with them in 2007, and the year later we did the show, and then we won the TV show, and, it kicked off a whole roller coaster ride that we were not prepared for, and we had no idea. Yeah, we had no idea it was going to be such a cultural phenomenon. And like, it was, right place, right time is a real thing. I mean, like, people talk about luck. Like, what is luck? I mean, luck can be being in the right place at the right time, and then an event happening. But like, sustained luck, repeated luck is when you're at the right place at the right time and you've prepared for it. Because then you can now sustain that. You can keep it going. It's not just like some streak of dumb luck that you hit. So I think that was a testament for us. Like, it was like we had been preparing. We've been dancing for, all of us, well over 10 years before that moment. Right. And when we had that opportunity, that was it. And we won that show. And then, to this day, people still talk about, like, man, I used to watch you guys on that TV show. I used to vote for you guys. I was like, man, that's crazy.
I feel like it honestly seems like just the other day, like watching that story unfold. And I don't know. I mean, it feels like it was the beginning of kind of those shows where, people are putting their talents on display. And I feel like you guys were a part of helping those shows even have the success that they continue to carry today. Cause you're looking for that crew, that team, that individual that has crazy talent. you talked about watching the Jabberwockeez and just like wanting to be there, and how you have this ability to see something, go after it, go get it. Where does that come from? Talk a little bit about your upbringing and like where that desire, tenacity comes in, and even maybe the role dance played in your life as you were coming up.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a question that I've asked myself kind of recently. Like, what made me this way? You know what I mean? Because like
Yep.
I never I never pursued the traditional means of doing anything, which
Yep.
is like I wasn't a good student in school.
Yep.
And all I cared about was doing what I wanted to do, which was having fun.
Yep.
And for me, like the first thing that I fell in love with was skateboarding, you know? So I was like, man, I love skateboarding. This is so cool. This is so fun. And then like, I would, find out through my skater friends, they're like, yo, man, let's try to get sponsored. I'm like, what's that? And, like, oh, you get like free gear from like skateboard companies. I'm like,
Yeah.
what, you get free gear? I'm like, yo, dude, let's get sponsored. So
Yeah.
we would go to these like skate competitions where there would be like the skate brands that would show up
Yep.
and they would essentially like scout. And then there was a local skate shop near where I was living. They would low key sponsor like the local neighborhood kids. So like I would
Okay.
go there, they would give me like free stickers, they would give me like
Yeah.
free t-shirts. I'm like, yo, man, this is the best life
Yeah.
ever. And then they're like,
This is,
yo,
hey, this is like I hate to date us, but this is like pre-social media.
oh yeah, 100%. I'm talking about like the 90s right now. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
You had
And
to go
so
find sponsors. You couldn't just look
you
them
had to
up.
go find sponsors.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, now I'm hearing like, yo, if you turn pro, you not only get free stuff, they pay you. I'm like, what? You
Yep.
can get paid to skateboard? So that was it, man. Like
Yeah.
it was that kind of mindset that I had. I was, I was kind of entrepreneur. I would sell baseball cards, I would sell my micro
Yeah.
machines, like
Yep.
I would kind of hustle in that way. I would get candy from the store and sell it
Mm.
at school for more than what I bought it for. Like
Yep.
I was just trying to hack, like, I need to make money, but I don't want to go get a job. I want to
Right.
make my own job,
You was an
So I think
entrepreneur
that,
back then, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit. But,
Yeah.
I will say this, though, too, kind of to get a little bit deeper or like kind of get under the layers a bit.
Yeah.
I believe that my entrepreneurial spirit, and which is what I've learned from many
Mm.
successful entrepreneurs, it comes from a place of trauma. And what I'll say about that is that it could be very extreme trauma, or it could be
Yeah.
even like kind of surface level. But
Yep.
trauma meaning, like, let's say even for me, because I only cared about having fun, and
Yep.
I literally cared less about anything that wasn't fun. So school was boring to me,
Yep.
and so then I would not do my homework, I wouldn't study, I would ditch class.
Yep.
And I'd be getting C's, D's, and fails, and my efforts reflected my grades, right? And so,
Right.
but when you're getting bad grades, you start to think that, oh, I must be dumb, because if I was
Yeah.
smart like these other kids, I'd be getting straight A's.
Mm.
So now the narrative I'm telling myself is that you're dumb,
Yep.
like you're not smart. But
Mm.
I'm like, well, I gotta survive though, so I
Yep.
gotta figure it out. So it's kind of this like survival mode mentality, right?
Yep.
Where you kind of have to fight your way through and make things happen for yourself.
Yep.
And then I also not only had the echo chamber of like, oh, I must be dumb, but like I also had this like, my parents were like, you're never gonna do anything with your life if you don't go to school. And so I'm
Right.
just like, watch, I'm gonna go figure it out. Like I'm gonna make the
Yep.
skateboarding thing happen. And then when my mom made me stop skateboarding because I started hanging out with like the wrong crowd, she's like, you
Yep.
can't skateboard anymore. I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna dance then. And then dancing, it kind of kept me out of trouble. So
Yep.
like she kind of was okay with that. So all right, fine, go ahead and dance, but make sure you go to school and all this other stuff.
Wow.
And then so I figured out a way, like even when I decided that I wanted to pursue dance professionally, I saw that there was a dance industry and there was like a way that it works. It's like
Mm.
you go and audition, you get an agent, you have
Yep.
to go audition to get an agent, and
Okay.
then the agent signs you, and then they send you out on more auditions, and you're trying to book jobs.
Yep.
And then outside of that, you can go teach classes at your local dance studio. So that's kind of how you make your side money. I'm like, okay,
Yep.
so my whole career is at the mercy of whether someone is willing to hire me
Right.
for something that I'm auditioning for. Like, please
Yep.
bring me onto your job. I'm like, this is whack, dude. Like,
Mm.
I don't want to do this. You know, I mean, of course I wanted to
Right.
dance behind my favorite artists and stuff. And I was able to dance, you know, behind some artists that I had kind of dreamed of, like, oh man, it'd be sick to dance with Omarion someday. And I
Yep.
did. But I was like, man, this is not the way I want to do it. Like, I want to call my own shots.
Right.
And then when I saw Jabberwockeez, I'm like, wait, these guys are dope for what they do. They don't need to go
Right.
audition to be like, hey, Britney Spears, can we be in your music video? Like, if anything,
Right.
like, they're hitting us up to be like, hey, we want the
Yeah.
Jabberwockeez in our video to do
Yep.
what they do, you know, because we're our own brand, we're our own, you know, like we're the artists, we're not dancing
Yep.
behind the artist. So that was where I was like, wait a second, this seems like something that we can like double, quadruple down on,
Yep.
and just build out our own thing. And then, you know, when we had the opportunities, again, talk about luck, right place, right time, right opportunity.
Yep.
Like Las Vegas, we had an opportunity to perform at a Sweet 16 birthday party of like the VP of MGM
Wow.
casinos. His daughter was having a Sweet 16 party, and her wish was she wanted the
Sweet
Jabberwockeez
16 party.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
That's
so
crazy.
then we got the call and we're like, yo, guys, we have this opportunity to perform for like the VP of entertainment at MGM. Like, if we crush this thing, who knows? We might get an opportunity to get in Las Vegas.
Right.
So we did. We put together like a 20-minute show, and we knocked it out the park. And then they started kind of like doing some trial runs with us. And then, long story short, they were like, hey, you guys are crushing this to get a residency there. So, you know, like that sort of entrepreneurial, I guess, spirit, you can call it, or grind mindset. Man, you got to put in the, like, they say that, you know, the practice you put in the dark will be praised in the light. You know, like, there are things that you just have to be doing while no one's watching, and keep grinding it, keep grinding it. And then when that opportunity comes, it's like, hey, all this work that I've been doing is now able to pay off here.
That's
and
right.
So, yeah, I've been that way, I would say, my whole life. And God's teaching me even now, because, you know, just to get a little bit vulnerable, you know, I am now 42 years old. So, you know, to be able to dance at that high level as I did in my 20s, those years are behind me. And the lie that the enemy would have you try to have you believe is that, oh, your time's done. You got nothing else left. You know, you might as well go get a job at McDonald's now. I mean, nothing against getting a job at McDonald's, but I'm not trying to do that right now. You know what I mean? So that God's been showing me. He's like, no, he's like, now that there's a season that's about to change, like, what are you going to do? Who are you going to turn to for this next chapter? Are you going to go back to your old ways and just try to grind it out and try to just muscle your way through something else? And he's like, or are you going to come to me, and are you going to ask me, and are you going to wait on me to show you? And so that's the hard part for like any entrepreneur is like, can you wait on God? You know what I mean? Like, because, you know, our wiring is to be like, I got to figure it out. I've been grinding my whole life. This is how it works. And God's like, hey, I work different. I just work different, you know? So that's where I'm at in this current chapter.
I think, especially when you hit certain levels of success or heights of cultural success, then it's really like, man, what's next? Like, where's the next thing I'm going to? Because you feel like you have to stay at that level.
Right.
And I think everything from God, I mean, I'm reading in 1 Corinthians, God says, I use the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. And so, like, our definition of success versus God's definition of success can take on all these different forms, but we have to be humble enough to wait, to receive. And then ultimately, like, and I want to talk about this more in a little bit, but even where you're going right now and what you're doing, man, I see how God is giving you everything from the story he's been telling through your life. And he's even allowing you to impact people in a more, I'd say, kingdom focused way. And so, like, there's levels to where he wants to take us, but we all culturally have a definition of what success looks like. I love how you started off with talking about some of the trauma. And because I think ultimately, you know, pain affects all of our lives. And pain God uses as part of the purpose that he has for us. And the way you've connected. I've heard some people talk about like big T trauma versus little T trauma. Big T trauma are like some of those, major traumas that you experience, but we've all experienced the little T traumas.
Absolutely.
And your story and how, some of the things that you feel like you didn't have or weren't smart, how it gave you this edge to try to figure things out and become very entrepreneurial in your thinking, have this tenacity. As you were talking, I thought about, I saw a podcast recently and it was talking about NBA players. And a couple of players were talking, I don't know if you heard this or not, but they were talking about motivation. And some of these guys were from the hood, grew up in, really tough environments, kind of big T trauma, I would say. And they said fear really motivated them to be great. But then they were talking about some other guys who were in the league and who were great also, but they described those players as being motivated by love. And so the question that they were debating, and these were just two NBA guys debating, what's more powerful, being motivated by fear or being motivated by love? And
great question.
I think number one, I don't have an answer to that. Like I just saw it recently, and I was just kind of, I've been processing it. But when I thought about your story, I think about as a young person, I would say that you were motivated by fear.
Yeah.
Fear of what you didn't have. I would say the same thing about my life and my story. I would argue, and I'd love to hear your perspective today. I would say that you're probably more motivated by love.
That's right. Yeah.
And your love for God, your love for people. I mean, you're more motivated to impact people because of your love for God.
Yeah.
I'm sure you would probably agree with that, but what are your thoughts about that? The idea of being motivated by fear or motivated by love?
Man, that's a great question. So I would say when I was younger, my short answer is both. But the way that I would frame it is when I was younger, it was, I went towards the thing that I love to do, AKA the fun thing.
Yeah.
And I would,
That's
when
right.
you love something, you don't clock the hours that you're putting into practicing.
Yep.
You're not like quantifying like, hey, is this going somewhere? You're just like obsessed. You just do it. And then like anything that you really spend a lot of dedicated time doing, you're probably going to be at least pretty okay at it. You know what I mean? And then the more you obsess and you get very proficient, and then you get really good at it. Right. So I would say that I went into the things that I love to do, and I grinded so hard because I was like, if I don't succeed, I'm all this is going to be a waste.
This could happen.
So so it's like the love that initiates it, and then the fear that sort of drives it to like, I have to go somewhere with this.
That's good.
And I would say nowadays, it's kind of similar in that it's the love that I have, not necessarily because, it is fun. I love doing like podcasting. I love having these very intentional conversations with people that we go somewhere, the conversation goes somewhere. And I know the impact that there's just power in storytelling. And so and beyond just that, it's like when I get to do that, because I feel that the Lord has placed that on my heart, now I'm feeling more than it's like, oh, I enjoy it. It's like, wow, like I feel like I'm leaning into God's purpose for me.
That's good.
So now, as we get older, I think when we're young, we don't realize what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out what's the thing, because what's my thing is like, ooh, that's what I get to identify myself as. Am I a jock? Am I a studious kid? Am I going to be a politician someday? Like, we want to know what we're into because we're looking for an identity. But as we get older, we realize, to put my identity in the thing that I do, that's a very like faulty place to put an identity, because what happens when that thing is gone? I recently got injured. I like dislocated my hip. And I was like, man, this could be the last time I dance, And it was really discouraging and scary, because I was like, but Lord, I'm a dancer. I'm a dancer. What am I going to do if I can't do this? And God's like, is that who you think you are? He's like, you think you're a dancer? And, he was very like clearly yet gently correcting my definition of identity.
Yep.
And I felt the Holy Spirit was teaching me. He was saying, if you put your identity in the thing that you do, what if you can't do that thing anymore? Now, where are you at?
That's
Now,
right.
who are you?
Yep.
And he was like, your identity needs to be fixed in the thing that not even death itself can take away. And that is what I said you are, who I say you are. And, he was like, you are a son of God. For the ladies out there, you are a daughter of God. That is who you are. And I was like, wow, God, like, thank you. And that, talking about frameworks, like when you approach something through a framework and then that framework shifts, like, whoa, it's actually supposed to be from here. Yep. Oh, what? Like life just looks totally different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I think now, like, because I'm so, like filled, I feel like I'm operating out of like an overflow of love. And of course there's still I don't think it should ever be love or fear. It's a dance between both.
Good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sure, there's also the fear of the Lord, which is a different type of fear. But I'm also even talking about also just about the fear of like, yo, am I going to make it?
I want this to work.
I want it to work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there are ways, there are systems, there are disciplines, there are practices that have to be there in order for it to quote unquote work, AKA make a living, you know? So I think I would say, where I'm at now, it's more like the love is what's really like propping it up.
Yep.
And then the fear of like, there's still that like, yo, man, you gotta like make sure you're on your stuff,
Yep.
So I would say that's kind of how it's shifted into where I'm at now.
I love how you broke that down and even how you shared that as you're just thinking about it on the spot. But there is, man, this love that, I mean, you would dance. It's like there was a love there that caused you to go all in and give everything you had to that. And I do believe when it comes to God's calling on our lives, what is it that we love? What is it that we go after and love doing it? Because that's probably something God's put in our hearts. There's a reason we would love doing it, because we're wired and created a certain way. And what I love is going to be different than what you love. And what I love is going to be different with what somebody else loves. But I do think there's something about finding that thing that you love and doing whatever you can to spend time in there, especially if it's going to make a difference in the world. But I also love how you said it's not either or, and you talked about fear.
Yeah.
And I heard somebody say recently, I don't think they used the word fear, but it was this idea that if you're afraid of failing, or if you're afraid, what you're doing maybe isn't, that actually shows that you care.
Right. Absolutely.
And so there is a positive motivation that says, man, I want this to work because I'm putting everything I have into it, which is healthy.
That's good. Yeah.
We've talked about a couple of times, just, you in transitioning seasons. And man, once your hip starts going out, bro, I got some other injuries. I swear I felt so close to tearing my Achilles. And, I start Googling and stuff. They're like, oh yeah, you get to your upper 30s, early 40s, like you start to tear your Achilles and this happens. And
wow.
So I hate that for us, but we're getting wiser. We're getting
That's
smarter.
What it is. Absolutely.
And so as you transition to this next season, you talked about Dave Gibbons. He invited you to come speak at a gathering, a conference that he hosts. Talk about how that experience started helping you see something different, experience something different, and maybe is leading you into some of the things that you'll do in this next season of your life.
Yeah, with people, there are just people where, and you talk about wisdom, right? Like becoming wiser.
Yep.
I've learned that through my life, the ones who have made the most impact on me are the ones who have challenged me to do something that was outside of my comfort zone.
That's good.
And that's happened in dance. I've had, people who have, come up to me like, hey, Ben, you should choreograph. And I was like, what's that? They're like, oh, it's like putting dance moves together in a routine and then like teaching it to people and they do it. Like, and I'm like, I don't know how to do that though. They're like, well, you freestyle, right? I'm like, yeah. They're like, all you do is just freestyle and then you memorize it and then you put it to the music and you put it to counts and then you could teach it that way. And I was like, oh man, how do you count music? So it's like literally I'm having somebody like mentor me, right?
Yeah.
Of like, you see something in me that I don't know how to do yet. And you're like, don't worry, I could teach you, you know?
Yeah.
And so I've had people do that for me in dance. You know, even with podcasting, you know, I had, not to say that someone necessarily mentored me, but someone saw me having this ability to host something. You know, my friend was like, yo, man, why don't we start a podcast for our crew? And like, you should host it. And I was like, what? I've never hosted anything before.
Right.
They're like, yeah, but like, you're a great talker and you know a lot of people. So like, you know, let's just try it. And in my head too, I don't like to not try something because I don't know steps A to even like C. I might know A to B, you know, I might have an A to B, but if I have a strong A, I'm like, man, that's enough reason for me to try. Because I mean, what's the worst that could happen? If it doesn't work, just stop.
Yeah.
But if it works, keep going, you know, then who knows what else is next, you know? So even with podcasting, I was like, man, let's just try it, you know? And I started doing it in 2018 and I'm doing it still. So like, here we are, you know? And so now moving on to this next phase where Dave G hit me up and was like, hey, Ben, I would love for you to come and share at my conference. And I was like, oh, you want me to dance? And he's like, no, I want you to just share something. I'm like, share what? He's like, whatever you want. And I'm like, all right, like, and I'm thinking it's just like, just share something like, hey, you know, I'm a dancer and this is where I'm here. I don't know, something like that. But he was like, can you do a Pecha Kucha presentation? I was like, a what? I was like, I had to Google that. I'm like, what's a Pecha Kucha? So like,
the only reason I know what that is because my wife had to do one through her master's program. Otherwise, I would have no clue what a Pecha
For real, it's crazy, hilarious, right? But it's like, you know, 10 slides, 20 seconds talking about what's on each slide. I'm like, that sounds crazy. So I'm like, I've never done anything like this before, Dave. And he's like, you'll be fine. And so when he had that level of confidence in me, I was like, man, he must see something in me right now that I am not sure what he sees. So I'm, again, as you get older, the wiser, you start identifying things like that faster. You're like, all right, you see something that I don't yet. So I'm going to take the challenge, you know? So then I went ahead and I said, all right, Dave, I'll figure it out, you know? And then I was like, you know, what do I want to talk about? I'm like, well, what do I care about right now? And I was like, well, I'm all about passion and purpose. And like, I pursued that my entire life and that's literally changed my life. And I was like, ooh, what if I title my talk, like passion and purpose can change the world? And I told Dave and he was like, I love it. Let's do it. And I was like, all right, great. And so I did it. And then, you know, apparently landed pretty well in the room. And that was where like, you know, I got a ton of like just encouragement and just affirmation. They were just like, man, Ben, you should do this. And, you know, I've had people in that room like, hey man, you should turn this into a keynote and take it around. And I'm like, man, I don't even know what a keynote is. You know what I mean? I'm just like learning everything. So, you know, I really, I was really blessed by Dave and just like his he had that sort of vision and was able to kind of see it in me and help me unlock something. So good. Yeah, man. Yeah.
I feel like Dave is the ultimate empowerer. He sees stuff in us and you that we can't see in ourselves. And he has the ability to call it out and also create platforms where you can stand on it and use it and step out. And he has the faith to put you in those positions, which is unbelievable. And I love that message, passion and purpose. And I already know connected to your story and what God has done. I mean, that hits on so many different levels for so many different people. And so I could see it, man. I could see you taking that message on the road and continuing to lean into that. And it's just a message that everyone needs to hear. And obviously God's told a story through your life that connects with that message. And so I don't know if you have plans or keynote, a tour set up, but make sure Omaha, Nebraska is going to be a stop.
Oh yeah,
your tour,
you know,
on the Passion and Purpose tour.
The Passion and Purpose tour. You just named it right now.
A little bit of dancing, a little bit of speaking, a little bit of podcasting.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see it,
I
man.
mean, I will say this, bro. Like, I don't think that's too far off from what I feel like God is leading me towards. And
Yep.
one thing that that I would say, like, because I'm so used to being in crews, right? Dance crews. Jabberwockeez is a
Yeah.
dance crew. Kinjas is a
Yep.
dance crew. And
Mm.
I always felt this like safety of like, all right, if I'm in a crew, it's not all up to me. Like we're
Right.
all going together. Like where I fall short, he's gonna be
Yep.
strong and vice versa. And the fear
Good.
that I had was like, God, like in this next season of life,
Mm.
are you telling me to roll solo? Like, I don't know if I can
Yeah.
roll solo. I don't know if I want to roll solo. I
Mm.
like being in teams. And I
Right.
felt the Lord was like, what made you think that you were going to roll solo? I'm just going to provide you with a new crew.
Right.
And with
That's a good
that, like,
word. Mm.
yeah, with that, I've been seeing God's bringing people around me that are kind of
Yep.
like similar in what we desire and what our
Yep.
hearts and our minds are kind of like very similar in that way. People who are in the coaching and the speaking space.
Yep.
And I feel like God's like forming a new crew. And I'm like, yo, Lord, I feel
Wow.
like you're assembling the Avengers around me right now.
Wow.
Cause like I see where they're
That's
at
good.
and they vibe with me and they want to roll with me too. And I'm like,
Mm.
whoa, Lord, I think I see a new crew forming. So
Wow.
with that, man, like yeah, I'm kind of like teaming up with some incredible men and women that like are in
Wow.
this space. And we might be doing something similar to what you just
Come on,
mentioned.
man.
So
Come
we'll
on.
make sure that Omaha, Nebraska's on the tour stop.
Hey, no flyovers, man.
Yeah, yeah,
we,
yeah,
we we
absolutely.
we want you here, need you here. Like I said, I love just your message and the uniqueness of the story God's telling through your life. Talk about just two things here to wrap up. Number one, I could ask
Hmm.
questions all day,
Yeah, for
and I
sure.
love
All
hearing
good.
your perspective and your heart. Number one, just real briefly, tell us about your podcast because that's a
Hmm.
powerful way for people to tap into your message. And as you're bringing on people that you're interviewing, just to stay plugged in, the Good Service Podcast, tell us the heart behind that. And then number two, what's the best way for people to follow you, stay connected to you, stay updated on that upcoming tour that you got coming out here sooner than later?
Yeah, for sure. So Good Service Podcast. Yeah, I mean the inspiration behind it was my buddy. I mean, this is right after Dave invited me to that conference. I had already been thinking about another podcast idea, not because I felt like I just needed to do more content, because who needs more
Yep.
content for the sake of it? But I
Right.
felt the Lord really stirring my heart to tell stories through the lens of like not just like tell faith-based stories, but people
Yep.
have asked me over the years, because I'll be talking on my other podcasts about, entrepreneurship and
Yep.
different things about artistry. And I'll mention here and there my walk with the Lord. It's not that I'm
Yep.
trying to mute that part, but I'm like, oh, that's not what those shows are about.
Right.
And so I've had people over the years ask me that, hey, Ben, do you ever like plan on doing some other type of show where you talk a little bit more about like the stuff that really drives you? Like you talk about
Yep.
God and stuff here and there, but and I was like, oh, do you think people would be interested in that? People are like, yeah. So I'm like, all
Yep.
right, maybe. So yeah, after I went to Dave's conference, like I got so much just affirmation from
Mm.
those that were there, and they were all encouraging me, like, yeah, Ben, do it, man.
Yep.
Like we'll all subscribe, we'll all share it. And I'm like,
Yep.
okay, sick. So then I hit up my buddy Kevin, and I told him like, man, I think we got to do this like podcast. And he's like,
Mm.
I'm down, bro. Like, let's just do it. And then
Yep.
he and we became friends over the pandemic, and we would meet up for like these lunches and stuff. So often,
Okay.
we would just gather over food, we'd break bread, and then we'd have
Mm.
these like really dope conversations. And we're like, why don't
Yep.
we just do that like in front of microphones and a camera, like just
Yep.
us like breaking bread. And, as
Literally.
like, yeah, literally breaking bread, like, it invites conversation that
Yep.
goes somewhere, right? Like when you ask someone to lunch or dinner, like you don't just sit down and talk about the weather. You talk about
Right.
like, man, like what's going on in your life, and then it invites you to go deep. And so we're like, man, let's just do that. And both of us were very like, we're trying to come up with the name of the show, and we're like, well, what's like important to you right now? What's God saying to you? And he's like, man,
Mm.
I feel like God's saying, don't do anything that doesn't serve. Like
Yep.
it doesn't
Good.
serve me. And I'm like, yeah, for real. That's me too. I was like, I said my mission statement is that my purpose is to serve through intentional and connected conversations.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's what my mission statement is. I'm like, okay, well, I think this goes along in line with my mission statement.
It's good.
And so, with the words good service, you go to a restaurant because it has good food and good service, which ultimately creates a good experience, which makes you want to keep coming back. Right.
Yeah.
And, also the words good and service can mean different things to others. So we're like, hey, let's just use the play on words, good service, because that relates to food experience as well as like how you show up in the world, right? Like, what is your good service? What do you bring to the spheres that you're around? How do you serve well in the spheres that you're around? So we're like, good service, man, let's go. And we've been out for about a year now, and man, God's just been breathing all over it. It is blowing up right now. And it just goes to show that like people are hungry, both like physically, like right now it's lunchtime, so I haven't eaten yet, so I'm about to go eat soon. But people are hungry, and people are hungry for the Lord. The people are hungry for I won't even say the Lord. People are hungry for something deeper than what they see on the surface around them. And I'm seeing it all around. And even the people that listen aren't necessarily like Christians only. People are just tuning in because they're like, yo, there's something here. There's some substance of what you guys are talking about. And so we're like, this is for you. All are welcome. We're not out here just being a Christian podcast. We're just talking about the real things that go on in life. And, we talk about the through the lens of entrepreneurship and creativity and dance and entertainment, because that's who we are too. So like you're getting, it's like you're getting an entrepreneur's perspective through the lens of who Jesus is and how he's reframed the way that we see everything and the way that we show up in the world in every way. So, man, it's a blast, man. We're, we love doing it. It's about a year old now, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
Come on.
Yeah.
Well, hey, where can people follow you, stay plugged in? Obviously there's a podcast, any other social media handles or ways that people can stay connected?
Yeah. I would say, first follow Good Service Pod. We're on both IG and TikTok. Just look up Good Service Pod. We're also up on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube. Just look up Good Service Podcast. And me personally, I'm mainly active on IG. So you can find me at BTEK, BTEK _Ben Chung, BENCHUNG. Mainly active on IG, but I'm also on TikTok as well, same handle. Those are the places where you can find me. And I got something coming up very soon, which I will be promoting on my IG. I will be launching a coaching program. And developing right now with a good handful of friends who are helping me kind of like fine tune it and figure out how to structure the program specifically in entrepreneurship, but through the lens of myself being a choreographer and a dancer. And this is not just for dancers. This is through the lens of a dancer choreographer, but these are principles that apply to everyone. And I'm really excited about it. I'm building it out right now. So that's coming soon. So if anybody out there is interested, come and holler at me on IG. I'll put the link up in my profile.
Come on. And we'll share some of that information too when we launch the podcast. But bro, thank you so much. Again, I could keep talking because I love your story. I love the coaching lane that you're moving into too, just because I feel like it's such a powerful lane to help people practically pursue God's calling through a faith lens, but also through a practical framework. And so I'm excited to check that out. I'm excited to get you here on that tour and get you coming through Omaha. I look forward to that. But seriously, bro, thanks for your time. Thanks for investing today. We're going to stay in touch.
Yeah. Hey, I know you're coming out to LA soon. Maybe we can get some time to break some bread and just chill.
I would love to. Well, hey, thanks everybody for tuning in to today's episode. Like I said, you are not disappointed. I know that. I hope you are encouraged, inspired. I know God's going to use Ben's story, parts of his story, whether it's his past, his present, even where God's taken him to encourage you right where you are. You're a game changer. I want to encourage you, use your influence, maximize your influence. God's telling a story through your life. Use it for good service to impact the world around you. Look forward to seeing you at the next episode.